Last weekend, my partner and I decided to visit our favorite camping spot. It's a remote place. Not many folks venture up this mountain. Usually, there are 1 or 2 people around, and even then, they're miles away from our campsite. It's not a well-known spot. And just like every year, we also brought my dog along. After setting up our camp, enjoying some food, and having a couple of beers around the site, we realized it was empty. We're used to seeing at least one hunter or fisher in the area, but this time, not a soul was in sight. So we relaxed by the campfire with our little dog nearby. When it was time to call it a night, my usually calm dog refused to settle inside the tent. The weather was warm, so we had the tent unzipped with just the mesh covering the opening to let in some fresh air. However, my dog was fixated on something beyond the mesh. We decided to investigate the camp for whatever had caught his attention, but we couldn't see anything. We returned to the campfire and started talking. As we chatted, we heard the sound of branches cracking further up the mountain, as if something were stepping on bushes. We stopped talking, and the noises ceased. It was a bit unsettling, but we brought a rifle as we decided to go hunting the next day, and we've got a pretty big fire going, so we started talking again. The rustling got closer, like something or someone was moving down the mountain. We stopped talking, and once again, the noises also stopped. This pattern repeated a couple more times, but we brushed it off, assuming it might be a cougar, common in the area and known for unexpected attacks on people. Then, my dog, who had been calm for years of camping, started snarling and barking furiously. This startled us. After a few hours of his unusual behavior, we decided to turn on the truck's lights to illuminate our camp in the surrounding darkness. We were on edge, trying to figure out what he was seeing or hearing. After a few minutes, he lay down, but then he alarmed us again, causing us to make a run for the truck. Our hearts raced as we waited inside the truck, trying to catch a glimpse of whatever might be out there. After about 20 minutes, we assumed whatever it was had moved on. We cautiously returned to our spot in front of the fire. My dog's hackles were raised, and we suddenly heard the loudest snap of a tree branch, just about 10 feet away from us in the pitch-black wilderness, and saw some sort of shadowy figure. I grabbed my rifle from the truck and fired a shot into the air. Whatever it was, hauled its ass up back to the mountainside in the pitch black, covering about 400 feet in just 30 seconds. It was incredibly eerie. It seemed to know when to stop, like it was responding to our conversation. It moved too quickly to be a person, especially in such dense brush and total darkness. We haven't returned to that spot since that unsettling night, and it remains a mysterious and eerie memory in our camping adventures. Once upon a time, deep within the shadowy Cordillera Mountains, my college professor embarked on a chilling camping trip with his friends. His tent stood alone, a fragile refuge amidst the eerie wilderness. After having joyful conversations around the campfire, they eventually got tired and decided to call it a night. At midnight, the professor woke up with a shiver, his breath visible in the frosty air. His eyes widened in terror as he saw a woman with tangled, messy hair, and her clothes were torn and drenched in blood. She had a sinister smirk on her face, and she started crawling towards him on all fours, like a wounded animal. He screamed at the top of his lungs. This time actually he woke up, realizing it was a horrific dream. His friends, who were camping nearby, heard his cry and hurried to his tent to see what had happened. They were concerned, but when he told them about his dream, and a few of them became visibly uncomfortable, with all the color draining from their faces, they insisted that they pack up and leave camp as soon as the sun came up. It was only when they were safely away from the mountains that his friends finally confessed something creepy. They also had similar dreams that night, except in their dreams, they saw the same woman crawling into the professor's tent. It became a creepy memory, one they would never forget, that blurred the line between reality and imagination. A few months ago, my wife and I celebrated our 3rd anniversary. We decided to take a break from work and do something special. We thought it'd be nice to rent a cabin in the mountains for a few days. It wasn't the most extravagant plan, but we hoped it would be a romantic getaway. Plus, the cabin owner was a friend of a friend and offered us a discount. So we packed our bags and headed for the mountains. The cabin was nestled in the middle of nowhere, and to reach it, we had to drive down a secluded private road. The closest house was about a mile away, but we didn't know these details when we booked it. When we arrived, we were so amazed by the cabin that we didn't mind the remote location. We spent the evening sitting around the fire, talking, and enjoying a few drinks. Hours passed by, and it was around 3 a.m. when our peaceful night took an eerie turn. We heard the unmistakable sound of a chainsaw starting and revving up. We couldn't understand why someone would be cutting down trees in the middle of the night. The noise was soon accompanied by maniacal laughter, sending shivers down our spines. We quickly extinguished the fire and retreated into our cabin. The sounds were somewhat distant, which provided us with a bit of relief. Moreover, we had a licensed pistol for safety if things escalated. Over the next few minutes, the noises seemed to draw closer, further intensifying our fear. However, the engine or whatever it was suddenly cut out, leaving us in silence. After about half an hour, we started feeling comfortable enough to try and fall asleep, aided by the drinks we'd had earlier. We surprisingly managed to doze off relatively quickly. I don't know what time it was, but at some point during the night, I woke up unsure of what had roused me. As my senses slowly returned, the sound of footsteps reached my ears. I stood up, and to my relief, my wife had already done the same. We sat there, eyes locked, listening to the multiple sets of footsteps circling around our cabin. My wife suggested we make a run for the car through the back window, but I decided we should wait a few more minutes. Through the window behind her, I saw 3 shadowy figures moving slowly. I kept this detail to myself, not wanting to frighten her any further. I gripped the pistol next to us, fearing that we might have to use it. As I watched the shadows from outside stop to the front door of the cabin, seconds felt like endless hours. After a couple of nerve-wracking minutes, I saw the men walk away. It was our chance to escape. I told my wife it was time to leave, and we left everything behind, rushing out of the cabin and sprinting to the car. While running, we could hear fast footsteps behind us and loud maniacal laughter. We got to the car and quickly rushed inside, and I floored the gas pedal, leaving the unsettling place without looking behind. It was only then that I told my wife about the shadows I'd seen outside the window earlier. She was understandably upset that I hadn't shared that information earlier. We spent the rest of the night in a hotel. The next morning, we decided to return to our campsite with the hotel staff member, only to find all of our gear missing, not a single item left behind. We were totally puzzled about what had truly happened that night. Part of me believes that we might have unknowingly trespassed on someone else's private property, and the chainsaw and footsteps were their way of scaring us away. But there's also a lingering fear that those people meant to cause us harm. Either way, they made off with all our camping equipment. One thing is for sure though, I'm grateful we didn't end up as victims that night.